He and Lorraine trapped her in her flat and tortured her, whipping her with a dog chain, setting her hair alight with a cigarette lighter, and rubbing salt into her wounds. Hello and welcome, I hope you are doing great. My name is Gabby and today's video is about Britain's youngest female double murderer, who was only 15 years old when she committed the crimes, and she was actually born the same year as me. This is the case of Lorraine Thorpe. On the 9th of August 2009, police in Ipswich, Suffolk received a phone call from a concerned member of the public regarding the safety of a neighbour of theirs, 41-year-old Rosalyn Hunt. When police went to Rosalyn's flat in Victoria Street, they found her dead body inside. The post-mortem revealed that she had sustained multiple fractures prior to her death, including 9 broken ribs along with numerous other injuries, with the cause of death being a heavy blow to her neck and chest. The following morning, the body of 43-year-old Desmond Thorpe was found by police after they were informed that a man had died in Limerick Close. He had a number of external injuries to his body as well as a faint patterned mark on his forehead, which could have been caused by the imprint of a shoe. Cuts on his upper lip caused by his teeth led a pathologist to conclude that he had been smothered. The police immediately announced that they suspected that the two cases were linked, and that same day they arrested 2 suspects, 41-year-old Paul Clarke and Desmond Thorpe's 15-year-old daughter Lorraine. Lorraine was born and raised in Ipswich in 1994 and grew up in poverty. She was 12 when her parents divorced and at first stayed with her mother, but at 13 she left to live with her father, a disabled alcoholic who needed Lorraine to care for him from a very young age, in a series of squalid flats and occasionally intense. She stopped going to school and stopped taking the medication that she'd been prescribed to treat her ADHD. Lorraine did come to the attention of social services, but the frequent moves made it difficult to keep track of her, especially as Lorraine was deliberately evading them, and when she was placed in a specifically assigned school, she absconded and returned to her father. The same year she moved in with her father, she fell in with a group of frequently violent middle-aged alcoholics who regularly fought with each other and repeatedly committed theft in order to be able to pay for alcohol. The de facto leader of the group was Paul Clarke, and despite being 3 times Lorraine's age and her being below the age of consent, the two ended up in a relationship. In early August of 2009, Paul fell out with Rosalyn Hunt, another member of the group of alcoholics, blaming her for his dog attacking a child. In response, he and Lorraine trapped her in her flat and tortured her, whipping her with a dog chain, setting her hair alight with a cigarette lighter, and rubbing salt into her wounds. Lorraine kicked her, punched her, stomped on her, and Rosalyn survived days of abuse until eventually they beat her to death. Her body was found 5 days later. Days after the murder of Rosalyn, the pair decided to murder Desmond Thorpe after he threatened to tell the police what had happened. They took him from Paul's flat in Mountbatten Court to a friend's flat in Limerick Close, where Lorraine smothered him with a cushion before kicking him as he lay on the floor. She later admitted to police that the imprint on her father's head was from her trainer. Paul and Lorraine were convicted of the murders in Ipswich Crown Court on the 3rd of August 2010. Both had denied the charges, with Paul Clarke testifying that he'd kicked Rosalyn twice on the day she died, but that he did not think that his actions contributed to her death. He said he had fallen asleep in Rosalyn's lounge and had been woken up by Lorraine Thorpe, who told him that Mrs. Hunt was dead. He claimed that Desmond Thorpe had been a friend and denied being involved in his death. Lorraine chose not to give evidence at her trial. Her barrister, Graham Parkins QC, described her as being a vulnerable person herself, both physically and in terms of her emotional well-being. It was highly inappropriate for this young girl to be playing a role of carer to her drunken and indeed very frail father. He added that she never really had much of a chance in life. Mr. Parkins said there seemed to have been little supervision of her and she had been left to her own devices. During the trial, jurors heard evidence from a young friend of Lorraine's who said that she'd confessed to being a murderer. A fellow inmate also testified that Lorraine had spoken about her father's murder to them on the anniversary of his death. Prosecution barristers Ross Jones said that Rosalyn Hunt became a prisoner in her own home and died from multiple injuries due to the continuous attacks that she suffered at their hands. Desmond Thorpe, who was killed days later, had been smothered for reasons only known to Paul and Lorraine. Paul Clarke was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 20 years, while Lorraine's sentencing was delayed until September at the Old Bailey. Judge Mr. Justice Sweeney said that Lorraine had in part carried out the attacks as she had been keen to impress Paul, and in his sentencing remarks he said that while Paul Clarke was the instigator in the murder of Rosalyn Hunt, Lorraine had played a full part in it in an attempt to cover it up, saying that she was responsible for protracted kicking, punching and stamping on Rosalyn, who was not fit to defend herself effectively from the outset. By the end of those attacks, she was completely helpless. Far from being sorry, Lorraine appears to have gloried in it, describing to her friends at one stage how she stamped on Rosalyn's head. He went on to say that at the time of his death, her father was a hopeless alcoholic, unable to walk, unaided, or do anything for himself in his weakened state. Not only was he extremely vulnerable, but his daughter had accepted care of him. The only possible explanation for his death can be the fear that he would go and tell police what happened to Rosalyn Hunt. I don't accept that she was entirely under the control of Mr. Clarke. She is someone who can be quite stubborn and willful and is capable of being highly manipulative herself. Her story is an appalling one and her case is rightly described as wholly exceptional. She spent all her time with middle-aged alcoholics to whom violence was a norm and stole to get the drink which they craved. Lorraine Thorpe was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure at the juvenile equivalent of a life sentence, and said that she would not be released until the parole board was satisfied that she was no longer a danger, with her minimum sentence being 14 years. Upon her conviction, she officially became Britain's youngest female double murderer. In April 2011, Lorraine and Paul had appeals against their convictions for the murder of Desmond Thorpe turned down, with judges at the Court of Appeal saying that they had no doubt that the convictions were safe. The pair did not challenge their convictions for the murder of Rosalyn Hunt. And in September of 2014, Paul Clarke was found dead in prison at Her Majesty's Prison, Whitmore. It is believed that his death was a suicide. As of September 2019, Lorraine Thorpe was imprisoned in Her Majesty's Prison, Foston Hall, and in March of 2023 it was reported in the press that she would have her first parole hearing on whether she would be released in the summer of 2023. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing so you never miss any future videos. But until I see you again, please be safe, be well, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.